Hello, everybody, and welcome to our IELTS Grammar Masterclass lessons. It's great to have you along, and I hope that you enjoy today's class. We're going to start by looking at the 9 essential parts of speech for IELTS. And in general as well, this will help you not only for IELTS but all aspects of learning English. So join us today and we will take you along through the 9 different parts of speech with lots of examples and sentences that can help you if you are about to sit the IELTS exam. Okay, so the 9 essential parts of speech. Well, what are these? These are the building blocks of the English language, and they are both integral for speaking and, of course, writing in the IELTS exam. So this is a lesson that will help you with all different aspects of the exam. And they consist of nouns. We also have pronouns. We have verbs, our doing words. We also have adjectives in the English language, adverbs as well, prepositions, conjunctions, interjections, and articles. So you might be looking at these different aspects of the building blocks of the English language and think, oh yes, I know this, or perhaps I don't know this group so much. For example, articles, that might be new. So what we're going to do today is go through each one, and we're going to use lots of examples, of course, explain what their function is within the English language. And then hopefully by the end of today's lesson, you will feel comfortable with all of these 9 different parts of the English language. Okay, so let's begin with nouns. What is a noun? Let's start at the very beginning. Well, a noun is a word that represents a person, place, thing, or idea. Let's look at some examples. So, happiness. Sunny days bring me happiness. And in this situation, happiness is functioning as a noun. It's like a concept or an idea here. Okay, another example, we have London. Now you might notice the capital letter with this noun, and that is because we have a subcategory called proper nouns. Now these are names of places or people, and a sneaky way you can tell a proper noun is exactly what we've just pointed out, the capital letter. So London, the capital city of England. And for that reason, we give it a capital letter because it's a proper noun. So, for example, London is my favourite city. Okay, another example. Book. I have many book genres I like. So this is another example of a noun. Teacher. The teacher is vital for student motivation. So teacher is a common noun. We're not being specific, we're being very general here. If we were being specific, that would change the noun to a proper noun, and then we'd provide a capital letter. For example, teacher, and then maybe their name, so proper noun, or Miss, Mr, Mrs, and then followed by their surname. So that would create a proper noun here. But for this example, we're just keeping it general, so the teacher. Okay, so those were nouns. And now that leads us nicely into pronouns. So now that we understand nouns, What exactly is a pronoun then? How do we use these parts of the English language, these building blocks? Well, a pronoun is a word that's used instead of a noun to avoid repetition. So in your speech and in your writing, it's really nice to have variation in all different aspects of speech and writing. We don't want to repeat ourselves too much. We want to keep it interesting for both the speaker and the listener, or if you're writing as well. So this is where pronouns come in. They add extra depth and layers to our speech and writing. Let's look at an example together then. So he. For example, my best friend Alex loves candy. He eats it every day. So it's important to note here that pronouns can only make sense once a noun has been mentioned in a sentence. So the first sentence, my best friend Alex, Alex being the noun, the person, capital A, proper noun. So now we know what the speaker or the writer is talking about. We're already talking about Alex. So it's perfectly fine to now use a pronoun to refer back to Alex. If we omit the first sentence, he eats it every day, well, I mean, that's grammatically, that's a fine sentence, but contextually, we don't know what we are referring to, what the speaker or the writer is referring to. So, for clarity, we want to always make sure that the noun, it has been stated and we know it, everyone's aware of it, and then pronouns can be used. Okay, she then is another example of a pronoun. My mum does so much for our family. She is the backbone. There we go. So who are we referring to? The speaker or the writer's mum. My mum. And then this is perfectly fine to use she. Okay, another example. When we're not talking about people, we might want to use it as a pronoun. So not all nouns are people, and it can be really useful to refer to things like events, things in general, things happening. For example, the park run on Saturday is still going ahead. It will be memorable. So it referring to the park run here. And the park run is a specific event. That's why it's capitalized here. Another example, they. So he, she, when there's one person. If there's a group of people that we want to refer to, this is when we can use they. The group will end up at the museum. I think they will be fascinated. So plural, more than one person in the group, and we can use this pronoun here. Okay, those were pronouns. So we've done nouns, pronouns. Now we can come to our verbs. What is a verb? Let's break it down. So a verb is a word that expresses an action or a state of being. I think it's quite nice to think of them as maybe doing words or action words. That's a good way to spot them if you're not too sure. Okay, examples. For example, run. My New Year's resolution is to run 3 times per week. So we'll touch on this a bit more, but we have is, which is a form of the verb to be, but run is the main verb of this sentence, so that's why I've highlighted run. But you can have more than one verb in a sentence. That's okay as well, but we'll touch on that a little bit later on. This is just a brief overview of verbs to get us started. write. That's another example. I love to write. I'm currently putting together a non-fiction novel. Is okay, so we've touched on this a little bit. The form of the verb to be. My dog is the most spoilt animal I know. There we go. Okay, and we have another example, have as well. They have such a good taste in music. So it's important to note that verbs change depending on the subject. And we'll go into this more when we talk about the subject verb agreement, and we take a deep dive into verbs in other lessons. But essentially, we have to match the verb with the subject. So here, they is the subject, they. So we need to make sure that the verb is also plural. They have. So for example, I have, you have, he, she, it has. So the verb changes depending on the subject. Okay, that was an overview of verbs. Now we can dive into our adjectives. So what is an adjective? This is a describing word, and it focuses on describing or modifying nouns. And adjectives can come in all different, there's all different types of adjectives. So we'll look at that together. For example, beautiful. The cherry blossoms in Japan are beautiful. So what's beautiful modifying? The cherry blossoms. It's describing how they look. Another example, large. That mountain we climbed was particularly large. So describing the size of something. In this case, a mountain. Happy is one that lots of people know and use. The seaside is my happy place. What is happy describing? The seaside. And another one, intelligent. I remember being sat next to the most intelligent kid in school. Intelligent, modifying kid, describing the kid. All right, so those were adjectives. A brief overview. Now let's dive into adverbs. So how do these differ from adjectives? Well, let's have a look. They are words that describe or modify not just, not really nouns, they modify verbs, adjectives, and also another adverb. So when we're thinking about questions like how, when, where, to what extent, this is where adverbs come in. This is how we modify the other parts of the language, not just nouns. So let's see this in action then. We have quickly. It all happened very quickly. So we're describing here how it happened, the speed of which something happened. Soon is another example. Exciting things are happening soon. So again, we've used this happening here in another way, another form. Exciting things are happening soon. So how quickly something is happening. Very is a popular adverb. It's used in a lot of different situations. She was very interested in that position, and so was I. Describing the extent to which she was interested here. Okay, and then we have another one there. The ball went flying over there. So this is an interesting adverb describing the direction where something went. So adverbs are a bit more flexible than adjectives, and this is reflected in their position in the sentence. They can appear in a few more different places, perhaps at the beginning sometimes, or middle or end. So hopefully that helps distinguish them from adjectives for you a little bit. Okay, what's the next part of speech? We have prepositions. What is a preposition? Well, this is a word that shows the relationship between a noun, or indeed a pronoun, as we've now learnt about pronouns, and other words in a sentence. So this could be direction, this could be placement. We'll have a look at some examples together. In. That's a great example. The purse was in the bag the whole time. So we're describing the relationship between the purse and the bag. Another one. On. The book is on the counter where you left it. What's happening between the book and the counter? Well, we now know thanks to prepositions. The book was on the counter. So we're building a picture in our head of where things are, and it's good for imagery, prepositions, and clarity, of course. Under is another example. The cat is hiding under the table from the fireworks. So we know where the cat is, under the table. And there's the cat. Okay, another example, beside. I am the one stood beside the teacher in that photo. So we're thinking about the direction, where this subject is here. I is in relation to the teacher. Okay, so prepositions are really useful to show the relationships between the nouns, as we've seen. Now, let's move on to conjunctions. What is this? Well, a conjunction is a word that connects words, phrases, or clauses. So you see conjunctions a lot. You might not know that they were called conjunctions, but I'm sure that you might recognize some of these words. Words like and. I went to the shop and got some bits for dinner. This is a very, very common conjunction. Without knowing it, probably we say and write it a lot. Okay, another one you can probably guess, but is a good example of a conjunction. Watching a film at home is good, but the cinema is way better. So words that connect two ideas, two clauses, two sentences together. Can you think of the next one? It's or. We could either do a beach holiday or a mountain holiday. There we go. So that's another example of these connecting words. They're like the glue to bring everything together, different sentences, different ideas. Okay, and because, another really common word. I think that gift is better because she loves chocolate. So they each connect different things together. So if you're explaining something, you can use because. If you've got two different options, you can use or. If you want to just state multiple things, you can use and. They've all got their own context in which you use them. Okay, those were our conjunctions then. So let's move on to interjections. Another part of the English language which might not be so familiar to some people. Let's have a look. What is an interjection? Well, this is a word or phrase used to express strong emotion or surprise. So speech and language in general is varied, and it's brilliant in the IELTS exam to include these different emotions. And we'll have a look at some which you can use in your speech and your writing, perhaps. Wow. Oh wow, I didn't realize how much you bought. So this is a common thing to say to show surprise, and don't be afraid to use these interjections in your speech. It really creates interest and shows that you are engaging with the conversation. I think they're a really nice touch to any conversation. Oh no! Oh no! That's not fun. So you might have heard this quite a lot. Oh no! Very, it's a very common phrase to say, and it shows that you are empathizing with whoever you're speaking with, and understanding that something is not so fun. Another interjection. Yikes! The traffic is bad today. Yikes. So this is something you can tag on to maybe the beginning or the end of a sentence to show your, it's almost surprise mixed with dread or regret, or I wish I hadn't have done something, or maybe I should have done something different. So again, a great word to include. So, one more word, crikey. Crikey, it is hot today. That's at the beginning of the sentence here. And that, again, is like a surprise or a shock statement to show that you are really feeling the heat in this situation. All right, so great words that you can include in your speech interjections. So let's move on to the last area of the 9 essential parts of speech, articles. What is an article? So these are words, they're very small words, but they actually really help us to understand whether a noun is specific or unspecific. Okay, let's think about this a little bit. So, 2 types, definite, which is the. So if something is specific, for example, the park run, which we talked about earlier, then you want to use the, because in that situation, it's a known event. The context is there. Maybe you've spoken about it before, and you want to, in that situation, use the. However, if something's quite vague and general and unspecific, you can use a or an depending on what the next word starts with. So, as an example, the word article starts with an a vowel, so we want to use an before it. If a word starts with, or if a noun starts with a consonant, you can use a. That's just a small point there, a useful point. But there we go. So we've got 2 different categories. Let's see them in action here. So a cat, for example. And we can say something like, a friendly neighbourhood cat loves our garden. So we don't know this cat. It's not our cat. It's a general cat, maybe of the neighbourhood here. So a cat is fine. If we were to know it, maybe know its name, we could say the cat. Or if it was our cat, of course, we could say the cat. But it's quite general here. And we've got some nice adjectives to describe the cats as well. Okay, another example then, the computer. So we've used the definite article here. The backpack is behind the computer. We've actually got 2, the backpack as well as an example. So we know both the backpack and we know the computer. So in this situation, maybe it's ours, maybe it's one of our family members, our friends. We're all aware of the 2 nouns here. An apple. So here we've got an example of a noun starting with a vowel. So we use an. Here, take an apple as a snack. So maybe there's many apples and we're just taking one. It's not a specific apple. It's just a general apple here. Okay, and another one, the exam. Oh, we've used a definite, so everyone in this situation will know which exam we're talking about. The exam will be held in 2 weeks. So context is really important here because this might be a teacher telling the class about the exam, so everyone understands what the teacher is talking about. However, if I'm taking the IELTS exam and I'm talking to a stranger on the street about my IELTS exam, I wouldn't want to use the exam because they don't know what I'm speaking about. So maybe I'd use an exam will be held in 2 weeks for that situation. So context is always so important. Okay, there we go. So those were our articles. Now we're going to finish off today by just discussing some tips that you can employ into your practice for IELTS. So when we're thinking about speaking then, when we're thinking about describing people, places, we can use a variety of nouns, adjectives, and verbs. Variety is so important and it will help just keep the interest there or keep it more interesting for you as well to talk about and the examiner. So you can use your pronouns to add variety, different adjectives, different doing verbs. For example, I have a close friend who lives in a bustling city. She is a talented musician and plays the guitar beautifully. Last weekend, we attended a vibrant concert together. So you can see all the words and phrases in green add a real depth to this passage, and it just makes it so much more interesting to speak about and to listen to as well. If you're describing a graph, you can use adjectives and adverbs and appropriate prepositions to show the relationships as well. Example, we could have the number of students enrolled in the science program increase steadily over the 5-year period. By 2020, the enrollment had risen significantly, reaching a peak of 500 students. So there we go, the words in red, we've got in as our preposition. Words like steadily, significantly, describing how something has happened are adverbs. So that's really nice to use that for our task 1 as well. If you're writing letters, you can of course use a mix of nouns, pronouns, verbs, and of course adjectives to add interest there. For example, I am writing to express my gratitude for the wonderful hospitality you showed during my recent visit. Your kindness and generosity made my stay in your city truly memorable. Lovely. So those are really nice examples for the task 1s, the academic and the general. Now, when we're thinking about our essays, we want to use everything that we've learned, our nouns, our verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and connect them all with our conjunctions. Just as an example here, you could say something like, in conclusion, fostering a sense of community in urban areas is essential for creating a harmonious society. By promoting social interactions and investing in communal spaces, cities can ensure the well-being and happiness of their residents. All the words and phrases in orange are great here. They're adding interest and depth, and we have relationships happening here. We know the connection between the nouns, so this is a great example.